Huh. Again. Oh my gosh, it's so funny because I literally was like, "Oh, I should check just in case," but I literally just checked before the stream came on. Anyways, let's just keep going. Anyways, at least this time it wasn't 10 minutes before I realized. Okay, well, let's just really start. Let's just really start. Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I am back for another video. We are going to do some good old fashioned feminist theory. I'm excited. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. But before we get into the good old fashioned feminist theory, today is Juneteenth. I actually started for Harriet as a blog in my college dorm room on June 18th, 2010. I was meaning to do it on Juneteenth, but I did it a day early, and then after I had already, pressed publish, on the For Harriet website, I was like, "Crap, it's June 18th, not June 19th." But the actual anniversary was supposed to be June 19th, 2010, and I was on Juneteenth early because I grew up in Texas and Oklahoma, so that was when I was into Juneteenth, but everybody else was not into Juneteenth back then, okay? And I wanted to start a explicitly progressive feminist online space. And I grew up, of course, as a Black American with Essence and Ebony, but Essence was just a little too mainstreamy for me because even in college, I was political. I was a feminist. And I just thought that there just needed to be a space where Black women could come together and talk about our issues, but from an explicitly political, feminist, Black feminist viewpoint. And I made the space that I feel like didn't exist but needed to exist. And I cannot believe that it's been 14 years. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not surprised that it worked. I'll be honest with you. I don't really do things if I don't think they're gonna work, right? I'm not surprised that it worked. I'm not surprised that I'm still here 14 years later, but I am grateful for it. I am. I am so grateful that, oh, I can't, I'm a crier. I am so grateful that 20-year-old, because I started thinking about this when I was 20, before my birthday, which is March 13th. That the idea that 20-year-old Kimberly had when she didn't know anything about anything, I had no work experience. I just knew, I had like John Johnson in my head and other magazine publishers in my head. And I just thought, oh, I can do that. I'm just really I'm grateful for the experiences that For Harriet has brought me, the people that it's brought into my life. I'm grateful for everything that I've learned in business with regard to social media and media. I'm grateful for the way that my politics have evolved and expanded. I'm grateful for all of the amazing conversations that I've had over these last 14 years. I'm grateful for every single person who has invited me to come speak on their campus or to their business. Everybody who's paid me to consult. Anybody who has appeared on this channel in an official capacity or just on one of my random Instagram lives, people who invest in me, invest in this project, who've come to the events. Oh my gosh, you remember in 2017 and 2018 when I was literally traveling the country doing events, and like 250 women were like, do you remember when I would literally go to 6 or 7 cities in a year and like hundreds of women would be there and like y'all didn't know me? And that was crazy. Like, that's crazy. Like, I would just like drop into Atlanta, drop into LA, drop into Houston, drop into New York, and like it would be hundreds of women. And we would just hang out. I mean, we wouldn't just hang out, we would talk, but what? And still to this day, I will go places and somebody will be like, "Oh, I met you in 2018. I met you in 2017." Like, what? I'm so grateful that when my mom was like, "No, no, this is a horrible idea." I went back to school because, I failed out of school after my dad died. That was traumatic. But I went back and finished. And by then, For Harriet was a thing. And I remember explaining For Harriet, the website, to a professor, Marcy Morgan. And I remember sitting in her office, and we were talking about future plans and what do you want to do. And by that time, I had decided that I wanted to be, by that time, I had decided that I was not going to go to grad school like everybody else, that I was going to commit to making For Harriet a thing. And I showed her the website. And by then, there were already contributors. And I pulled it up in her office and she was like, "Oh, this is cool. This is interesting." She's like, "How are you going to make money?" And I was like, "I'm going to do this and this and this." And she was like, "Okay." And she's like, "We'll feature it on the department website. We'll link to it on the department website." I'm like, "What?" Like, "Oh my god, like this is crazy." And at that time, I was just starting to, this is like 2012. It was just kind of sort of starting to be a thing. And that was like the first time I had a national media hit. So my first national media appearance was on NPR. And I was a senior in high school. I mean, I was a senior in college. And like hearing them say the name of the website, and I'm just really, man. And I think that was when it was All Things Considered, was it? It was Michelle Norris was the host of the show that I was on, and I remember doing the interview from like a little attic studio on Harvard's campus, like their little campus radio station, and me being like, "Oh my god, like I'm." Anyways, I am grateful that, oh my, and I remember the first, oof, sorry, last thing. Um so by the time I went back to finish my degree, For Harriet was a couple of years old, and there was momentum for sure. And I remember, I think I was studying for something and getting an email from a professor at Cornell, Noliwe Brooks, and I was a senior in college. And the email was asking me my rates to give a keynote at Cornell. That was the first time anybody had ever asked me how much money I charged to speak. And so, first of all, I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. Like, I'm in college. Like, ma'am, I have to study for finals right now, and you're asking me to give a keynote, and in the email, it was asking, like, "Are you I know you're at Harvard. Are you a student or are you faculty?" And I just like, "What? I am a child." Now, I'm a child who's older than everybody else because I took 2 years out of school, but I'm like, "I'm 23. Like, what's going on?" I mean, I didn't say that. And then I think I got back to her and I was like, I could do it for $250 or something crazy." And anyway, she was like, no, you're not giving a keynote at Cornell for $250. Anyways, I said all that to say that I am so grateful that from the time I was, but when this was nothing, no revenue, okay, no pathway to real viability. I'm first living in my mom's house, then I go back to school, I'm living in dorms, then I graduate and I don't have money. I'm living in my aunt's house, then I get a little bit of money. I get my first apartment. Every step of the way, there were Black women like, this is a great idea. Why is nobody else doing this? This is great. This is what? Like, sure, come do this and come speak here and and how can I help? And I'll put the link up on the department website. And of course, and you're going to be fine. When my mom was like, "You're not going to be fine." But there were I'm grateful that there were other adult women who really had their shit together, who were willing to trust that I was going to be okay. And by the way, even when my mom was like, "Oh, I don't know about this," she still let me live in her house, like like I think about that a lot. Like, you know, even when my mom she could have easily just been like, "Not only do I not believe in this, but you can't be here if this is what you're going to do." But she didn't do that. So anyways, here I am 14 years later, and I do make more money than my mother, but that's really not the point, right? Because actually, she's a high earner, right? She's an engineer, so she's a high earner. But I know she never would have guessed that. She never would have, bitch. She never would have guessed. But I believed in myself, and I'm grateful for everybody else who believed in me. And beyond the money thing, because I mean, I was doing this when I made nothing. I was doing this when I lived in a $600 a month apartment in Oklahoma City, and I was not sure how I was going to play my cable bill. I was doing this then, and I was not going to give up on it. Um, it is really great to be able to do something that you love, like genuinely love, and are passionate about, and I'm excited by it. Oh, my mom is not gonna like that I said that I make more money than she does. She's not gonna like it. She's not. Alice, Alice, I'm not lying. Alice, because she's watching now. You know that you told me that you weren't going to support. You asked me what was being on the computer all day ever gonna get me. You said that. But we're cool now because I'm old. I'm grown. There's no reason to be mad now. So, anyways, happy Juneteenth. Happy birthday to this platform that I just truly my baby. And I'm just so grateful to anybody who's come here and found value in it and shared it and liked and subscribed and bought the merch or joined the Patreon, even though I'm a bad Patreoner, but I'm trying to get better. I'm just grateful. And I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of myself for not giving up because there were some hard days, hard, embarrassing days. We don't have time to get into that. Hard, embarrassing days when you, even after I graduated, and people are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm working on this website." Or like all of my friends have graduated and are working real jobs, working at Morgan Stanley or working at Goldman or going to Stanford GSB or law school. And I'm like, I'm working on this website. um, have you ever heard of like Ida B. Wells? Because she was like an early feminist, and I just feel like there needs to be a place where Black women can talk about feminist stuff. Those were hard times. Those are hard times. Anyways, I'm glad to be here. We are here. We are here to talk about sex positivity. Um, let me, So last year, I made a video called Why the Girls Are Giving Up on Sexual Liberation. And I saw a trend of women who, in the earlier days of Instagram or social media, had been really explicit about their sex lives and were, proud hoes or proud sluts or whatever. And they were a decade later coming back and being like, I don't believe in that anymore, or I take that back, or ooh, I approached this in maybe not the exact right way. And I went through why that was happening. A link to that video is in the description bar below or the description box below. I wanted to come back and talk about this again because I made that video in a pre Dobbs v. Jackson world. We had inklings and heard rumors that the Supreme Court was going to overturn women's right to safe legal abortion via Roe versus Wade. But it wasn't, the opinion from the Supreme Court had not come down yet. And that happened last June. We're actually like exactly almost a year out, a year to the day almost, to when Dobbs v. Jackson was decided. And I think that that ruling has cemented and catalyzed in the United States ideas that were already growing. They were already taking root. And now that women, particularly women in the South, I think I saw something that said half of Black women in the United States do not live in a state where legal, where there is access to safe legal abortion. And how does that happen? That happens because Black people disproportionately live in the South, in red states, in former Confederate states. And so Black women's reproductive rights are severely curtailed by any rightward movement in the judiciary or legislatively. And so yeah, there's more things for us to talk about here. Oh, oh no. I've done the thing, you guys. Crap. Wait. Okay. I accidentally messed up. Crap. Okay. w- one second. Okay. Anyways, now that we have that preamble, let's go ahead. We're going to take a look at a couple of articles and then we can discuss them. I'm going to read some of them and then not read some of them because I know that y'all don't like it when I don't read all of them. Oh, actually, I forgot. I added some new stuff to this. So we can actually take a look first at the articles that I'm going to read. Okay. New animation. So the first article is sex positive feminism had its moment and now it has been replaced by voluntary celibacy. The second, oh, I'm sorry. The Dobbs v. Jackson decision was in 2022. I said it was 2023. No, it was June 2022. Why did I say that? Anyways, now we are firmly in a post Dobbs v. Jackson world where we are seeing the horrible consequences that lack of access to reproductive rights wages on all kinds of women, but particularly Black women, particularly marginalized women, particularly poor women. And now the concept of sex positivity feels dangerous in a different kind of way. All right. So, first article, sex positive feminism had its moment and now it has been replaced by voluntary celibacy. Second article, the feminist case against having sex for fun. Third article, sex positivity was fake, but we'll miss it when it's gone. Let's start with whew, this is in The Guardian. Published May 21st, 2024. Get thee to a nunnery. Apparently, it's the hottest place to be. Get thee to a nunnery is a Shakespeare allusion. While we still very much live in a sex saturated world, voluntary celibacy is having something of a moment. Evidence of this is everywhere. TikTok, for example, is full of videos of young people extolling the virtues of abstaining from sex. Meanwhile, a Lithuanian rom com called Slow has brought asexuality to the big screen. In South Korea, there is a viral 4B moment, which gets its name from the four types of bi or no: bi hon, no heterosexual marriage; bi choson, no childbirth; bi yonne, no dating; and bi sexu, no heterosexual sexual relationships. In the US, Generation Z comedian Hope Woodward has started a boy sober trend, which involves straight young women eschewing dating. Multiple studies show that around the world, more and more young people seem to be quite happily opting out of sex. This says multiple studies. I want to click this link. Okay. Thousands of words have been written about the great sex recession. It's hardly some sort of underground trend. Nevertheless, Bumble, the dating app, which once styled itself as a beacon of women's empowerment, became because heterosexual women had to make the first move, appears to have missed the memo. A few weeks ago, the company launched a global advertising campaign, the point of which seemed to be to make casual sex great again. A vow of celibacy is not the answer, one billboard read. Thou shalt not give up on dating and become a nun, proclaimed another. Now, if you are I actually am. I had to touch up my makeup in between streams, and actually, this is a good look. Um, if you are behind the paywall, you have heard me say that I think people misinterpreted those Bumble ads, but the misinterpretation or the general feeling toward the ads definitely says something about where people's mindset is with regard to casual sex, being encouraged to have sex, sexuality, and those messages being aimed at women. Because you know that I think that it was supposed to be a fun joke about you're not going to be a nun, like, but whatever, it's fine. It's fine. Let's keep going. Hmm. Okay. The campaign, which Fast Company describes as eyebrow raising, controversial, and tone deaf, did not land well. Some critics pointed out that celibacy can be a response to trauma. You guys, come on. Others noted that abstaining from sex might be a smart move in a post Roe US. Absolutely. Where one accident can mean you are forced by repressive laws to give birth to a child you are not ready for and can't possibly afford. Okay. Yes. Yes. Not to say that people are not abstaining from sex because of trauma. I just think that's a we're just doing a lot of leaps here. Um yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the point, right? So the point of these federal decisions and these laws is to restore a more conservative social order. And the more conservative social order is not just about compulsory childbirth or forced childbirth. The the conservative social order is I can't have sex with anybody I don't want to be committed to forever. So I can't have sex. And that social order makes women okay. So in a Griswold v. Connecticut was the court opinion that made birth control legal. Y'all are smart, so y'all make sure I'm telling the truth here. In a pre-Griswold United States, every single time you had sex, you had to be worried about, I mean, condoms were a thing, but, there is a possibility that, and by the way, men are in control of condom usage, okay? You got to make sure that he's doing the right thing with the condom. Is it, whatever? It's not really your domain. You don't have control over it. Post Griswold, women have control over contraception. Am I ready to have a child? Yes, no. It's my decision to go on birth control, and I can start it and I can stop it when I want to. And that wrestles some of the power away from men, because the reason why childbirth is or getting pregnant is such a scary position to be in pre Griswold, or casual sex is so scary, is if you accidentally get pregnant or get pregnant unexpectedly, it's completely up. And this is still kind of a thing, but like, if you have choice, if you have access to abortion, if you have access to birth control, you can take a little bit back. But your future is completely dictated by whether or not, especially in a United States that has more conservative mores around out of wedlock childbirth, it's completely up to whether or not your sexual partner wants to acknowledge you and the pregnancy. Because, like, a pre Griswold world is a world where there's no access to contraception, there's no right to safe legal abortion, and we're pre feminism, we're pre women's lib. So if your sexual partner says he does not want to acknowledge you or the sex act or take care of the baby, what are you gonna how are you gonna support yourself? It's not, I mean, you're gonna work, right? Because black women in the United States have always worked. Even married black women overwhelmingly had to work, but their jobs were shitty. So you can work. Anyways, keep moving, keep moving. In a world fighting for respect and autonomy over our bodies, it's appalling to see a dating platform undermine women's choices, tweeted Jordan Emanuel, a former Playboy model who made headlines after taking a vow of celibacy for a year. That's Jordan from Summer House Martha's Vineyard. Is that who that is? Okay. What was meant to liberate women turned into a repackaging of the patriarchy. That's a pull quote. The actor Julia Fox was similarly unimpressed, 2.5 years of celibacy, and never been better, to be honest. She commented on a post about Bumble. Fox hasn't talked much about her celibacy, but last year she told Elle magazine that she just wanted to be left alone and was sick of men. I feel like knowingly engaging in a heterosexual relationship, you are signing yourself up for an unhealthy dynamic. Oh, okay. Okay, Andrea Dworkin. Okay. She mused. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I'm saying, oh, everything old is new again. Okay. Long story short, Bumble did not read the room. They didn't. They didn't. Now, that we can absolutely say. After a lot of social media outrage, the company issued a groveling apology on Instagram and announced it will remove the offending ads, donate to domestic violence charities, and generally be better. Please don't cancel me for saying this, but that apology feels a little bit over the top. Perhaps my reserves have been exhausted by watching an unfolding genocide, but I had a hard time working up any outrage about the Bumble campaign. In fact, I could barely find it in me to muster up a feeble little, well, that's problematic. The campaign may be uninspired, but getting het up over it, it feels unnecessary. Getting het up? Okay. Is that a typo? Feels unnecessary. Not every advertising billboard is supposed to be read as a serious indictment of your lifestyle. Sometimes it's just a stupid joke. I agree, but we are getting at something deeper here. That said, the brouhaha over the great Bumble fumble, as the controversy is being termed, does point to a fascinating change in culture. Sex positive feminism, which was all about unapologetically celebrating female sexuality, has been on the way out for a few years now. And this feels like its final death knell. To be fair, some sort of correction was probably due. Sex positive feminism went from, hey, women shouldn't feel ashamed about enjoying sex, to it's feminist to enjoy being choked while having lots of casual sex alarmingly quickly. Oh my, you guys, we have got to talk about choking. I did not put that on the docket, but we have got to talk about choking. Our, let me write that down. Let me write that down because I just saw some survey data. Why are teenagers getting choked during sex? I just saw some survey data. Why are high school girls getting choked during sex? What the fuck? Now, babe, I am not anti sex work at all. I'm not anti porn, but it's hard. I'm not saying Catherine McKinnon was right because she wasn't. She really wasn't. She really wasn't. But I think that we have to wrestle with the harms, the way that porn normalizes really dangerous behaviors. And it would be fine. It would totally be fine if we truly, who the fuck get choked? Okay? If you're grown and you have agency and you have control over your body and your life and you're not existing in a fundamentally unequal power dynamic, who the fuck cares? The problem is all of this stuff is existing within communities, states, countries, societies where there's no checks. Like, I really think about what happens when there's fewer rights, like fewer literal rights for women and people with uteruses, okay? Women and people with uteruses, okay? Um, Fewer fundamental rights, less access to bodily autonomy, but more access to really dangerous ideas and these cultural products that put women in danger are more accessible and more normal, but the opportunity to push back on it, the the institutional ability to push back on it, the way to correct for that stuff is constricting. Does that make sense? Like, if we're surveying the landscape right now, there are different dangers than what existed in a pre-Griswold, pre-Roe United States because there are so few constraints on the violent misogyny. Like, clearly violent misogyny existed pre 1965, 67 is Griswold. But there was at least like a veneer of, social norms about doing the right thing and, benevolent sexism, right? Where like there was an incentive for like men and boys to rein themselves in. And I am not endorsing benevolent sexism because that's also restrictive and oppressive. But when there's more access to overt violent ideas, overtly violent misogyny, overtly dangerous and violent sex acts are normalized, and there are no cultural guardrails around, hey, you know? Like, it's both of those things are shitty. They're just shitty in different ways. Even with consent, choking is so dangerous. Most people don't know what to do it right. People will get hurt and killed. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, kink is fine. I don't really have a look, people, I'm grown, you know? Grown people do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. But when we're talking about people at the very beginning of their sexual experiences, I don't know what happened to good old fashioned missionary. Like, I don't like, I don't, teens are not. Anyways, I got, we're off track. We're off track. No, that is not what's happening. No, no. They're not talking high school sex. There's no high school sex education course in any part of the United States that is teaching 18-year-olds about safe sexual choking. It's not a thing. Adults get accidentally murdered that way, okay? It's not happening. Anyways, we'll come back to it. Whew. Okay. Of course, porn is the I um I don't consider 20 to 21 to 23 to be grown. I don't. I am saying I did not even I don't even feel like I had full control, full knowledge and understanding, acceptance, love, respect for my body and sexuality and sexual autonomy until I was like 29. Like I was having sex, but it wasn't a transcendent, it was like a thing. It was cool, but it wasn't like the next level. I don't, anyways, that's another conversation. We're getting off track. Okay. um yeah, sorry, I got tracked. What was meant to liberate women turned into a repackaging of the patriarchy. It feels like we were tricked into exploiting ourselves, one 20 something told BuzzFeed, summing up the general vibe. A new passion for celibacy among young women feels like a natural way of putting that chapter of feminism to bed. And the thing is like, girls should have space to explore their sexualities. I actually don't think the healthiest thing is for everybody waiting until they're late 20s to have any kind of sexual exploration. I actually don't think that that is the best thing. We just haven't figured out we just haven't figured out ways to offer that to young people safely and in a way that makes them feel good and empowered. And so the girls are opting out. And there's nothing wrong. I like, yeah, do that. Yeah. But it's really sad because sexuality is normal. I know that people don't really want to have to grapple with this, but teenage sexuality is normal. Throughout most of human history, teenagers have had sex and babies. The teen birth rate being as low as it is a way anomaly in the history of humanity. It's a good thing, 100%. 100% great thing. But it's new. New. So are we, because we have not protected teen girls, because we have not protected young women, we haven't given them the resources, we haven't gotten far enough in dismantling structural misogyny in healthcare, in schools, in our legal system. We've made them so vulnerable that they have just said, I'm just not going to do that. I think it's great that girls are doing what's best for them. But I don't think that this is the most ideal scenario. I don't think that this is the best we can do. All right, let's go to the feminist case against having sex for fun. And sorry, I have to hide all of my stuff. In February, America's most prominent conservative activist declared his opposition to having sex for fun. In a post on X, the anti woke crusader Christopher Rufo wrote, recreational sex is a large part of the reason we have so many single mother households. No. Which drives poverty, crime, and dysfunction. The point of sex is to create children. This is natural, normal, and good. Oh my God. Already oh my God. People take that fucking man seriously. That is not true, dude. Because I was interested in the Ebony K. Williams thing, I spent a couple of days really diving into the data around the family formation and the circumstances in which most children are born into. It's not true that most children are born because of recreational sex. That's not what's happening. It's not true. It's not true that most children are born outside of the confines of a relationship. It is true that if you're not married at the time that your child is born, you're probably not going to get married. That is true. But also that the relationship will likely end in the United States. Now, in other places, let me not go off too much on this because that's not what this video is about. In other places, they do have more stable extramarital relationships. But in the United States, not being married, and this is not endorsement of marriage, I'm just telling you, what I went through. Um, and this is particularly driven by a book from an economist named Melissa Kearney, The Two-Parent Privilege. Melissa makes some arguments in that book that I do not agree with at all. And I don't even know if Melissa agrees with those arguments, girl, because, but we can get into that later. But she does go through a lot of data and then following up on the conversations that she's having, and you can watch her talk about the book on YouTube and listen to the podcasts. But it's just not true that the children born in the United States today are just people randomly fucking or one night stands. That's not what's happening. It's just not true. Okay, keep going. Much go- much gawking at Rufo's grimly utilitarian take on sex ensued, yet the firestorm largely ignored the woman whose anti-birth control tirade had ignited it. Rufo's remarks were sparked by a video of 2023 Heritage Foundation panel. In that clip, a bespectacled British woman details the supposed ravages of both oral contraception and the sexual culture that it birthed. Side note, what is going on with the British feminists? Oh, I love talking about this. I love just being on here and being able to riff because, and this is why this is gonna be a 3 hour long live stream because I have so many thoughts in my head. The British feminists the white British feminists are so retrograde and conservative. From, I hate to say it, J.K. Rowling to Mary Harrington, who this article is about, to Kathleen Stock, to, is Louise Perry British? What is going on? I'm genuinely fascinated by this because something is happening in the UK. Okay, let's keep going. She claims that the normalization of birth control has condemned women to higher rates of mental illness while offering them little in recompense beyond the freedom to endure loveless and sometimes extremely degrading sex. Therefore, she continues, the world needs a feminist movement that is against the pill. and for returning the consequentiality to sex. That woman, the writer Mary Harrington, is an unlikely spokesperson for fundamentalist Christian morality. A one time leftist, Harrington remains a fierce critic of free market economics and an opponent of abortion bans. Okay. Yet her 2023 book, Feminism Against Progress, won her an avid following among American social conservatives, receiving adulatory, sorry, I can't,
Adulatory.
great, notices in the Federalist and the National Review, and earning her bylines at the conservative Catholic journal First Things. Harrington's appeal to these institutions isn't hard to discern. She is a proponent of reactionary feminism, an ideology that shares Christian conservatism's hostilities toward permissive sex norms, birth control, rights for transgender people, and mainstream feminism. But instead of indicting social liberalism on theological grounds, Harrington does so on entirely secular and avowedly feminist ones. Her complaint with birth control is threefold. First, Harrington argues that the pill undermines sexual norms that had previously protected women from the hazards of single motherhood and exploitation. How do I feel about that claim? Did it protect them? Like, that's the thing, though. Okay, did it protect them? Because here's the other thing, right? Uh, so I might agree with the idea that in a pre-legalized birth control, there was more social pressure, that there was more social pressure on someone who impregnated a woman to marry her. Okay. So I guess technically the culture, there's more protection for women because you're not going to be a single mother. However, comma, that's assuming that the marriages that spring forth from compulsory marriage are the kinds of marriages or the kinds of protection that women want or did want or felt good in or felt safe in. And I I don't think that like, if it was so great, then they would have still done that, right? Like like it wasn't so great though. It's also interesting, because I'm a Black woman, like, Black women's history is different, but it's interesting to hear white women say this because white feminist literature is rife with first person accounts of women who did have access to marriage, but the marriage was literally driving them crazy. Like, that's what, the yellow wallpaper is about, right? Like, she's going through, I guess we think it's postpartum psychosis now, but like people aren't taking her seriously. I mean, that's where the white feminist ideas and movement comes from, cuz it wasn't a safe place. And I guess the idea is, okay, well, the women weren't happy, but it was better for the children. I mean, again, that's like only if you think it's better for the children to grow up witnessing horrible, unhealthy dynamics and witness their mothers be miserable. I mean, okay. And exploitation, okay. Second, she insists that the advent of oral contraception led the feminist movement to embrace an excessively individualistic vision of women's liberation. I might be able to get on board with that. Before birth control, according to Harrington, the movement aimed to challenge the values of capitalism, insisting that familial caregiving was socially indispensable, even if it had no market price. But once they gained control, y'all, why am I having difficulty with this? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm really trying to go back in my white feminist reading Rolodex. There is certainly anti-capitalist feminism, but I don't think that that is right. I don't. I'm going to have to read the book cuz even I've I read Silvia Federici, the Italian feminist, who is an explicitly anti-capitalist feminist, but she comes in the 70s, and she's not anti-birth control. And then, the typical, this is black feminism, but Angela Davis, Women, Race, and Class, which is about, it's anti-capitalist fundamentally, and it is about valuing the work of caregiving, but that does not have to be in opposition to advocating for reproductive rights, meaning the ability for women to decide if they want to have children or if they don't want to have children. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think that this is true. But once they gained control over their fertility, feminists no longer felt compelled to defend the value of caregiving. I'm gonna have to think through it some more. Their critique of capitalism ceased to be that it valued what was profitable over what was socially valuable and became that it merely didn't pay women equal wages. I mean, I mean, if we're talking about second wave white women in the in oh, but really what we're talking about, I feel like is more this is more to me institutional capture, meaning the the gains of social movements, they disproportionately benefit the most privileged people in a society. That's what we see over and over again, movement after movement. That's what happens. And so that's what happens in feminism. It allows comfortable women to become more comfortable. They're comfortable in the home. They're comfortable and protected in the home. And then there's women's lib, and then those women get more access to higher education and grad school and employment that offers upward mobility. And that does result in the language around caregiving, the value of caregiving to be minimized, but that's still a small portion of the population. I don't think that that's a normative claim. I don't. Okay. Let's keep going. Okay, okay. Third, by dramatically reducing women's vulnerability to unplanned pregnancy, the pill led feminists to indulge in the fantasy that there were no innate differences between the sexes that couldn't be transcended through social reform and biotechnology. Maybe. I mean, I'm not, I think there might be something there. There might be something there. Okay. In sum, for Harrington, feminism is now defined by the quixotic pursuit of women's freedom from all social and biological constraints. And this antisocial utopian quest has served most women poorly, condemning them to a sexually exploitative dating market, alienating them from their own bodies, leaving them vulnerable to the predations of big biotech, and exacerbating their caregiving burdens by promoting social atomization and male irresponsibility. By promoting social atomization and male irresponsibility. I don't think that that is what has gotten us to male irresponsibility. I do not. I just don't. Okay, keep reading. I'm sorry. I can't dissect this line by line. Harrington is not alone in staking out this ideological turf. Oh, Louise Perry, a fellow British feminist, championed a similar vision in her 2022 book, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. Why is women saying this? Like Harrington, Perry evinces opposition to free markets and blanket bans on abortion, yet has nonetheless received a warm welcome from U.S. conservatives. This is so fascinating to me. This is so fascinating. Because on one hand, there is a part of me that could be like, the critique of markets I can get with, right? Because that's a critique of neoliberalism. The Sorry, girls. I know people didn't like when I said choice feminism is not your friend. Everything is choice, 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 choice. It's the market. Let the market decide. If you can do great in the market, you're going to be fine. No. But that leading you to. Wait. That's why we have to be careful, right? Because the critique of choice easily turns into fascism. Wait. We got to be careful, okay? Because the critique of let the market decide and the critique of the fetishization of choice can easily lead to the valorization of fascism. So it's like, whoa. We were on the same page. We were on the same page. And then you took a turn because they're saying, and what I mean here is a legitimate critique of the individualism that an an obsession, the prioritization of market concerns and market demands. Okay. The response is not. I think take away the choice is not a legitimate response to that. Take away all the choices. I don't think that that's a legitimate response. And that's why the conservatives like it. Um it's incompatible with feminism because take away women's choice is not take a okay. That's why the conservatives like it. Because remove the choice means remove the choice from women and give it back to men. That's why the conservatives like it. Somebody is still making a choice. It is women don't get to make the choice anymore. Right. Okay. Turf, go figure, clock it. We're to blame women for that. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Okay. Whew. Like Harrington. Okay. Perry evinces opposition to free markets, and blanket bans on abortion, yet has nonetheless received a warm welcome from U.S. conservatives. The American Christian right's enthusiasm for sex negative British feminists may reflect the conservative movement's present challenges. As the reaction to Rufo's condemnation of recreational sex demonstrated, the moral intuitions of religious conservatives have become deeply alien to an increasingly secular American public. They're losing. They're losing. Now, are we winning? I don't know if we're winning. Right? Like I think we're in a moment where like everybody is losing. Okay, with religiosity and church attendance in sharp decline, conservatives need non scriptural arguments for traditional social mores. Reactionary feminism offers them precisely this, and the ideology appears to have some potential appeal among young women alienated by online dating, pornography, and birth control side effects. In recent months, Harrington esque diatribes against contraception, online dating, and porn have trended on TikTok, a social media platform dominated by Gen Z. Reactionary feminism therefore warrants liberals' attention and our critique. Harrington and Perry are both strong writers whose work speaks to some genuinely problematic aspects of sexual modernity. But there are at least three broad problems with their worldview. First, where reactionary feminism speaks to genuine social problems, it offers few compelling answers for addressing them. Second, contrary to Harrington's theorizing, there is no sharp trade off between increasing women's individual freedom and meeting society's caregiving needs. Exactly. Exactly. If we ban the pill and ban abortion, and by the way, we're literally don't get me fucking. We're literally seeing this. I live in Texas, obviously. Abortion is banned. Did the abortion ban get coupled with more access to resources for single mothers or unmarried mothers or low income mothers and or families and children? Is an abortion ban coupled with guaranteed maternity leave, universal access to expanded Medicaid, more support, especially in this economy, for people who are struggling to find work? No, no. So, what happens is you take away choice and then you leave women with even fewer resources to care for themselves, to care for their children or their families. And they still don't get married, like, and they still don't get right. If that's your goal, that's the United States. Okay. Um, Finally, this brand of feminism is reactionary in the pejorative sense. Many of Harrington's and Perry's complaints with sexual modernity are rooted less in careful reasoning than in reflexive skepticism of change. Why reactionary feminists want you to have less casual sex? Reactionary feminism is built atop one fundamental premise. There are unalterable differences between the sexes, and mainstream feminism has ignored them at women's expense. This is where we get to the anti-trans stuff. This is where we get to it. Okay. This idea is at the core of Harrington's indictment of casual sex. In her telling, the pill may have reduced women's susceptibility to pregnancy, but it did not erase the psychological predispositions that males and females inherited from millennia of evolution. By downplaying or denying the persistence of these differences, Harrington argues feminists abetted the emergence of sexual norms that harm women and benefit predatory men. That part, I'm not 100% in disagreement with. Her analysis of modern sexual relations is focused exclusively on straight cisgender relationships. Okay. Ooh, this is important because it is the real heteronormative. Okay. Beyond her opposition to trans rights, she has little to say about the sexual revolution's implications for LGBTQ people. Really important point there. Here, Harrington's analysis converges with that of Louise Perry in the case against the sexual revolution. Perry notes that psychologists have consistently found large sex based differences in sociosexuality, a measure of an individual's interest in sexual variety and adventure. I think I have heard the evolutionary psychologists say that men have a high put a high emphasis on sexual variety. I have heard them say that. In every culture psychologists have studied, men tend to express a higher degree of interest. Okay, we're about to get there, in having lots of commitment free sex than women do. This does not mean that every man is more interested in sexual variety than every woman, but in the aggregate, Perry argues the divergence is clear. She further insists that these patterns are rooted in evolutionary biology. Males can pass on their genes merely by orgasming inside a female, while women cannot reproduce without enduring an extensive pregnancy and risky labor. I can't believe we're back here. We're really back here. This gives women a greater incentive to be selective in their choice of partners and men a greater interest in sowing their wild oats. Over millennia, she says, evolution translated these disparate incentives into distinct psychological tendencies. Alas, in Perry's view, modern sexual culture ignores these distinctions. According to her, whew, oh my God. It's like sexual dimorphism is like killing us. It's really killing us. Okay. Most women prefer a committed relationship to casual hookups. But the existence of oral contraception and legal abortion combined with feminism's insistence on male and female interchangeability has left them without an excuse for withholding sex until commitment is offered. What? More crucially, some women face a collective that's without an excuse. No. And this is not a critique of bro. This is not that's a critique for men, not for women. More crucially, such women face a collective action problem. Perry argues that in a culture where casual sex is normative, refusing to placate male desire puts a woman at a competitive disadvantage in the race for oh my God. What is going on? Online dating exacerbates these problems, according to Harrington. Natural selection has also bequeathed to modern women a preference for men with high social status. Okay, in addition to various coveted physical traits, combine that predisposition with men's taste for sexual variety and a norm of casual sex, and you end up with a highly dysfunctional dating market. Now, I have actually heard what is this man's name? I only know him by his social media handle, Date Psych. Do y'all know who that is? I've been watching a lot of Chris Williamson videos recently because I've been trying to understand what the fuck the conservatives are talking about. But anyways, he's an evolutionary psychologist and he has like it's like a dreadlock, but he's white. Anyways, um his takes on the dating market are not this. They're not that. Basically, you know, what he has said that it's like the top 20%, like most attractive people, are all being promiscuous with each other. Like the top 20% of attractive women and the top 20% of attractive, meaning like social status and all of that, men are, you know, screwing around with each other. And then Date Psych, DATEPSYCH. He's on Twitter and stuff, but they're sowing their wild oats, and then everybody else is either not in the active or they're doing serial monogamy. But anyways, his argument is that most people who are dating are doing serial monogamy. It's not just lots of casual sex. Yes, I did say a dreadlock. He has one lock. Don't even get me started on it. Don't get me started on it. It's just one. Okay. Um, Harrington and Perry note that on the dating app Hinge, 10% of men receive 58% of all women's likes. From this, they extrapolate that predatory high status men are each stringing along several women at a time, exploiting them for degrading and unfulfilling sex. Only 10% of women orgasm in first time hookups before assembling new harems. Meanwhile, legions of mediocre men go sexless and mutate into misogynistic incels. Mutual hostility between the sexes festers. That's not rooted in anything, though. That's not rooted in anything. Um, in the reactionary feminist narrative, all of this translates into fewer marriages, a collapsing birth rate, and within Gen Z, a widespread porn-addled celibacy. At the same time, partly because oral contraception is not always effective, especially when imperfectly used, the normalization of casual sex has yielded an increase in single motherhood. That's not true. And although such mothers should not be stigmatized, Harrington and Perry argue, it's nevertheless true that both mothers and children tend to fare better with a partner in the picture. Now, that is true. That is true. But how we got there is not. Oh, sorry, my my robot vacuum just started talking. I got distracted. There's just claims here that are not supported by with evidence. Okay. Thus, reactionary feminists validate the Christian right's deep-seated conviction that birth control is lamentable and that women have suffered from the decline of traditional sexual morality. What's wrong? This is nuts. And this is far from the only place where heterodox British feminists and fundamentalist American theocrats see eye to eye. As one might expect, reactionary feminists also share the right's opposition to pornography, sex work, BDSM. What's wrong with BDSM and healthcare and inclusion for trans people? Why? How are you harmed? Porn, I can maybe see a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm not anti porn. I'm just saying I can kind of see it. Sex work, how are you harmed? BDSM, how are you harmed? Even on reproductive rights, Harrington and Perry aid the conservative project. Although both oppose the legal prohibition of abortion, they also maintain that modern feminism favors personal autonomy over social responsibility to a pathological extent and see the normalization of abortion as a case in point. Harrington writes that as long as we uphold women's right to end a pregnancy, we conclusively favor the Hobbesian vision of selfhood over one that makes room for dependency and care. What? Perry has suggested that the trivialization of abortion um, puts us on a slippery slope to normalizing a sexual culture on par with ancient Rome, up to and including infanticide. Bro, what is going on here? Modern sexual culture does fail some women. Reactionary feminists get a few things right. Harrington and Perry aren't entirely wrong about human sexual psychology. And they speak to some genuine flaws in contemporary gender relations, but their inattention to public policy, exactly, and their warped political priorities leave them ill equipped to provide solutions to the real problems they identify. That cis men have, on average, a greater appetite for casual sex than cis women has been exhaustively documented. Oh, I'm so glad we're getting into the data part. As the evolutionary psychologists David Michael Buss and David P. Schmidt noted in a 2011 journal article, a long list of studies have found that men are more likely than women to 1. Seek one-night stands, 2. Consent to sex with a stranger, 3. Agree to have sex with a partner after knowing them for only a brief period of time, and 4. Express positive attitudes about casual sex, among myriad other behaviors indicative of high sociosexuality. Ooh! Oh, actually, this is really important. This is really important. In Melissa Kearney's The Two-Parent Privilege, okay, what she says repeatedly is that college is basically an institution. I mean, marriage is basically an institution for people who went to college and people who earn over a certain amount of money, okay? Like, that's what it is now, in the United States at least, okay? But people who did not graduate from college and who make less money don't say that they don't value marriage. Not in the United States. They do say that marriage is important. It's an important institution, that it is valuable, that they aspire to it. So I don't know. Maybe the British feminists are. I don't know what's going. I don't really. I haven't read deeply about what's happening in Europe in the UK, but here, people not getting married does not actually reflect their ideas about marriage, especially if you didn't go to college. If you did go to college and you say you're opting out of marriage, that actually says a lot more than somebody who is a low wage worker, did not graduate from college, and is unmarried. So there is something off about their conclusions. Something is off about their conclusions about why people are having children out of wedlock or whatever. It's the institution, right? Like the problem is there's something up with the institution. But anyways, okay, back to this. Whew. A large scale survey of 52 different nations spread across 6 different continents found that in every single culture surveyed, male respondents expressed more interest in sexual variety than female respondents. It is theoretically possible that these disparities are entirely the product of social conditioning, but their presence across cultures lends credence to the notion that biology plays some role. Evolutionary psychology can be put to ill use, but Harrington and Perry are certainly right that we are all products of evolution, and it's doubtlessly true that ejaculating requires orders of magnitude less time and energy than carrying a pregnancy to term. Given the centrality of sex to natural selection, it would be surprising if this fundamental asymmetry between what it takes for a cis man to pass on his genes and what it takes for a cis woman to do so left no imprint whatsoever on their respective average predispositions. It does not follow, however, that the collapse of taboos against casual sex has been a disaster for women. Men may be more likely to desire casual sex than women, but plenty of women appreciate the prerogative to have a little fun, or at least to know whether they have sexual chemistry with the person before marrying them. This said, there is little evidence to back up the reactionary. Thank you. Thank you. There is little evidence to back up the reactionary feminist claim that modern dating is serving men better than women. Thank you. Thank you, if only slightly. In a 2022 Pew Research survey, 57% of men who use online dating platforms reported primarily positive experience with the apps, while 48% of women did. Men were also more than twice as likely as women to say that they were using online dating to have casual sex, with 31% of the former saying it was a major reason they used the apps, and only 13% of the latter said the same. But this data paints a far less dystopian portrait of modern dating than reactionary feminists do. Let me look at this. Nearly half of women, I'm just trying to look at the data. Nearly half of women using online dating have had largely positive experiences, and a plurality of male daters, 42%, are looking for a committed relationship. According to the Pew survey, nevertheless, it appears to be true that some number of heterosexual women are having a rough time on the dating market, but it's both. Partly because their male dates tend to be more interested in commitment-free hookups than they are. Okay, everybody is having a rough time in the dating market because nobody wants to date each other. Some of reactionary feminists, I mean, if we go back to what was cited, where 10, wait, 58% of the women on Hinge were swiping on 10% of the men, or whatever that is, that does not, that data point does not indicate to me that men are having a great time. Okay. Some of reactionary feminists' other complaints with sexual modernity are more indisputably well founded. There's no question that the percentage of children growing up in single parent households has increased in the US since the arrival of the sexual revolution, rising from 9% in the 1960s to 23% in 2019. Yeah, but the question is, you guys, the other thing is, oh, this is why I've been reading economists right now. Oh, this is why. This is why it's been important. I'm sorry, I just connected all these dots. Connecting it to the sexual revolution is where the conservatives go because they don't want to deal with markets. And the way that neoliberalism, um, and the way that what Melissa Kearney calls, all of these economic shocks, especially for people who used to work in the manufacturing sector, to low income people, to poor people, people who don't graduate from college, the way that the economy has changed and has disproportionately marginalized those people, going straight to it's the pill and not to we completely decimated manufacturing in the United States, that things that used to be done manually are now being done by robots. um what else does Kearney say about, I could look it up in my notes really fast, but there's all of these things that have contracted men's ability to earn income if they didn't go to college, and men who aren't doing well financially don't get married, particularly if they're not doing well financially in comparison to the women they have access to. But like, okay, yeah, sure, blame the pill and not blame multinational corporations for greed. Okay. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to look. Shout out to you, Nicole Storm, who just became a member. Dating sites have more men than women, so women get to be choosier. No, most women leave dating apps because they hate the experience they have. Yeah. It's not fun dating when you don't have a, oh, that's the other thing. Yeah. You can't really date if you're just trying to get by. Okay, sorry. Whew. Okay. It is also clear that the overwhelming majority. Oh, and the other thing is, okay. So this is like the United States. In the United States, you either get married or you break up. There are not conditions or norms in the United States where people who are unmarried overwhelmingly have like really long lasting stable relationships after they have children, but that is the case in Europe. And so the question is, why is it possible for people in other parts of the world to have children together and then stay together and be able to raise their children or raise the children, because the other concern that the people have about people not getting married, it's not just about the institution, it's that even after a divorced couple breaks up, the divorced dad is more likely to have more contact with the child. They're more likely to provide financial support to the child after a divorce, and they're more likely to have more relational contact with the child than a breakup after unmarried parents have a child. Okay. But the question is, what's going on in the United States where unmarried people have children, and if they don't get married, like the father and the child loses contact, when that is not true in other places? And by the way, after reading the two parent privilege, where Kearney is arguing over and over again, we have to promote marriage, we have to promote marriage, she also acknowledges the cat is out of the bag there. We are never, ever going back to a country where the broad social norm is marriage. Okay, you have, and I actually like the book. I don't have a problem with Melissa Kearney. I'm not an economist, girl. Okay, I don't. I thought it was. I learned a lot, but you've outlined it is not just these economic challenges to people who don't have a degree. It's also that the social norms have changed, and once social norms change, you can't change them back. That's just what happened. Sorry. So there's no way to get back to the standard of, even if you're not married, you have to get, I mean, even if you don't have a degree, you have to get married if you're having a baby. Then you got to come up with something else. Right? Like, and she acknowledges the United States has invested many times in trying to promote marriage among low income people, among socially and economically marginalized people. It doesn't take. So why are we back to, we'll just keep promoting marriage? Something's not something's not. You got to figure something else out. You've got to figure something else out. Cuz people are not going to stop having children. And the social norm is never going to return to, I don't care. I don't care how many campaigns y'all make. I don't care how many NGOs y'all fund. It's just not going to happen. There's no indication that it's going to happen. So what are you going to do for the kids? Right? Like, that's actually the question. I get it. Like, okay, we want to rail against the pill. We want to rail against the sexual liberation. We want to wail against abortion on demand, and we're doing this under the pretense that this leaves women and children more vulnerable to the whims and the desires of men. Okay, whatever. In the meantime, what are you doing for the kids? Because they're still going to be born. They're not getting married. They're sorry. I'm sorry. It's not. And that's the craziest thing. Even the economists are confounded. And the I'm sorry, I'm going off on this, but the economists are confounded because um Melissa Kearney does really, really wide ranging, economic research. And there was this case where there was a town. Ooh, I don't want to get it wrong. But anyways, she basically, based on some of the research that she has done, came to the conclusion that in the past, when you provided more economic opportunities to a certain proportion of the men in the community, the marriage rate and the in wedlock childbirth rate went up. 40 years ago, that would be the norm. Now, when you take the same kind of community and provide more jobs to the men, the in wedlock childbirth rate does not go up because the norm has changed. What are you going to do? Figure some shit out. Okay, sorry. I'm off. I'm okay, sorry. It is also clear that the overwhelming majority of single parents are women, that children of married parents tend to fare better than those of single parents, all else equal, and that single mothers suffer exceptionally high rates of poverty. Reactionary feminists have few answers for what we should do about this. Thank you. Yes, but reactionary feminists offer little insight into what precisely we should do about any of this. Harrington and Perry both recognize that there is no going back to a world before the pill and grudgingly acknowledge that doing so would have significant downsides in any case. Of course it would. In their prescriptive content, both Feminism Against Progress and The Case Against the Sexual Revolution more closely resemble self-help guides than political manifestos. Harrington's book encourages women to reclaim their sexual self-discipline by going off birth control, thereby ensuring that they only go to bed with men whom they trust enough to wear a condom or pull out. Perry's book, meanwhile, concludes with a chapter titled Listen to Your Mother, in which she advises young women to, among other things, love themselves, trust their moral intuitions, and hold off on having sex with a new boyfriend for at least a few months to discover whether he's serious about them. This is so funny. This is so fucking funny because after all that, you circle right back around to individualism. After all that, we're back to women. You decide. Like, it's plausible that some young women will find this advice helpful, but given that, in reactionary feminists' own telling, so called hookup culture is a downstream consequence of reproductive technology, it is unclear how Perry's call for chastity is supposed to produce social change. Meanwhile, if one's aim is to reduce single motherhood, encouraging women to abandon the pill in favor of cycle tracking, right? You're unserious. You're unserious. And the pull-out method for pregnancy prevention seems unwise. You're unserious. Perry's and Harrington's books both evince disdain for free market economics, and in an email to Vox, Harrington described American social policy as frankly barbarous. Okay. In its failure to provide universal access to perinatal health care or federally mandated maternity leave. We agree. We agree, Mary. And yet, if reactionary feminists support economic reforms that would ease the poverty of single mothers and support family formation, they devote little time or space to advocating for such measures. Indeed, the only political activity that Feminism Against Progress endorses at length is the struggle against trans rights. That is, this is so absurd. It's so absurd. Rather than trying to elect parties. And that's what it all, bro, that's what this shit all comes back to. Instead of doing political action or endorsing public policy that actually improves lives, we're back to fucking trans girls in sports. Like, rather than trying to elect parties that support expansions of family-centric social wealth. And that is why the conservatives like it. That is why. Family-centric social welfare policies. Harrington employs reactionary feminists to focus on capturing NGOs and educational institutions so as to push back against gender-neutral rest. Come on. And policies on the use of trans students' correct pronouns in schools. Come on. This seems like a difficult set of priorities to justify, even if one were to accept all of Harrington's own trans exclusionary premises. Whatever one's opinion on sex-segregated spaces or public schools' pronoun policies, it seems obvious that these measures have less material impact on the welfare of cis women writ large than, say, whether the state guarantees them enough income to take maternity leave or keep their children out of poverty. Giving women control over their fertility makes it easier to care for our society's vulnerable, not harder. Thank you. Harrington's concern that mainstream feminism has grown excessively individualistic and inadequately attuned to the interests of working class women is not entirely unfounded. Okay. I agree. Certainly, upper middle class women have dominated the feminist movement since its inception. And at least in the United States, that movement has had greater success in dismantling barriers to women's full participation in market commerce than in fundamentally remaking economic institutions. Nevertheless, the belief that there is a sharp trade off between increasing women's individual autonomy and economic agency on the one hand and meeting our society's collective needs for caregiving on the other is mistaken. Seriously. Seriously. Women's rising labor force participation may have entailed a reduction in the number of hours that mothers spent with their own small children or older relatives. Yet the half century since the sexual revolution has also witnessed declines in poverty, both among both children and older adults. That is true. In material terms, the United States is taking much better care of its most vulnerable residents today than it did in the mid 20th century. We have achieved this by funding, and oh, this is controversial, but one of the more controversial parts, I know it's giving eugenics, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to give eugenics, but one of the more controversial parts of the Freakonomics book, which I know people have huge problems with. And look, I get you. I get you. Oh, I don't know if I want to go there. Anyway, if you have read Freakonomics and read their discussions of abortion, you know where I'm going, but I don't have time to unravel it. But anyways, let's keep moving. Y'all talk about it in the chat. We have achieved this by funding social welfare programs that transfer income from the working age population to those who are older, younger, and poorer. And women's full participation in the economy makes it easier to fund such programs. If our economies could not draw on the productive capacities of one half of all adults, there would be much less income to redistribute. Of course, children need more from their caregivers than material resources, and Harrington is doubtlessly correct when she writes that many professional class women can only escape the burdens of domesticity by outsourcing chores and childcare to a mostly female servant class. She is also surely right that some nannies and childcare workers would prefer to be at home with their own children if they were not economically compelled to nurture someone else's instead. But her book leaves the upshot of this observation unclear. By email, she clarified that she would like all public childcare programs to include a cash benefit. Okay, for stay-at-home parents. Oh, and actually, you know what? By the way, I'm selling Melissa a little bit short because that is also the thing. Um a potential policy initiative around the marriage issue is you have to give people money. Ooh, wait a second. Did I get that from Melissa? No. I got that from Moynihan. I got that from Moynihan. I did. Daniel Patrick Moynihan. I've been doing, in my absence from YouTube, so much freaking just a sickening amount of reading. It's been great. Um And not too long ago, I read an interview with Daniel Patrick Moynihan, lead author, the lead of the infamous Moynihan report from the 60s, from the mid 60s. And I think this was an interview he did in the late 80s. Late 80s. Actually, I can find it. Let me look at my notes real fast. See if I can find it really quickly. And if I can find it in 1 second, I will pull it up. If not, that's fine. Yeah. Oh my god. Not me being organization has really helped me. Let's see. Yep, I found it. Let's see when this was done. I write down every single thing that I read, every single article. 1994. Okay. So, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, author of the, historically I mean, the havoc that has been wreaked because of the Moynihan report. He was a sociologist, and what is it called? The Negro Family and the Case for Action. Is that what it's called? Not me remembering. Good memory there. Good memory. Something like that. And the conclusion of the Moynihan report is the Black community is a tangle of pathology. The women have too much power, they have too much control. The men are not working, so they can't lead the homes. It's dysfunctional. The kids are doing bad. Everybody lives in poverty. And Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who's actually not a conservative, actually had was a liberal, okay? he came back and was like, okay, so we implemented, all of these welfare programs, and, we implemented these. You mean, he does critique the Great Society. Um, but in 1994, he gives this interview to the LA Times and says creating all of these new social programs was not the best thing because that had unintended consequences. He says what we actually should have done was give money directly to families so that they could sustain themselves and stay together. And so that the economic strain, the economic burden of a changing economy, of an evolving economy, is not disproportionately shouldered by uh, Black men who did not go to college, basically. Okay. Okay. It's an idea. Okay. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Not in the US. It's not going to happen. Cash payments. I mean, look, we even saw during the pandemic that the cash payments that the federal government issued put the child poverty rate at historic lows. I mean, literally lifted people out of poverty. Like, what was that? Like $2,800? I'm sorry, I don't know how much stimulus people got. It's literally like $3,000. Lifted people out of poverty. Like, we know how to get people out of poverty. Like, people don't want to do that. If you are invested in family formation, you know what to do, but you don't want to do that. Nobody's really invested in the formation of traditional families because you don't want to do what we know works. That's why it's like all this is bullshit. I don't believe it. It's just like ways to shame women. Like, okay. Whew. Prefer if they were not economically okay. She's also surely right that some nannies and childcare workers would prefer to be at home with their own children if they were not economically compelled to nurture someone else's instead, but her book leaves the upshot of this observation unclear. By email, she clarified that she would like all public childcare programs to include a cash benefit for stay-at-home parents. This is a reasonable idea, but it is also one with a long pedigree in progressive feminism. Left-wing feminists have been demanding wages for housework. Are you about to do Federici? Whoa, 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 whoa. Are you about to cite? Because I'm really into Federici right now. Oh, okay. This is Icelandic. Okay. Oh, yeah, you are. You are. Wages for housework. The New York. Okay. Love it. Love my Italian feminist. And by the way, Italy going through it. The Italian women going through it. Okay. Anyways, let's keep going. Finally, Harrington and Perry's notion that the push for legal abortion epitomizes mainstream feminism's prioritization of personal freedom over obligation to others is highly tendentious. Ooh, tendentious. Their argument only holds if one accepts that the metaphysical premise that a fetus is a person. If one rejects that notion, then getting an abortion can actually be an affirmation of one's sense of obligation to other people. After all, the typical person having an abortion is already a parent, and parents often choose to terminate a pregnancy out of desire to concentrate more energy and resources on their existing children. Reactionary feminism's case against biotechnology and BDSM is rooted in superstition. Um, I might have to give up the reading because I'm about to lose my voice. Sorry. We have to go down. Oh, dang. Well, shout out to my okay, shout out to my boyfriend for texting me that y'all can't hear it. I'm literally about to lose my voice. Okay, let me figure out why it's not. I'm gonna have to 1 second. Usually, I've done this before and it worked, right? Let me figure it out. Hi, this is a bug bite because I'm outside, okay? But I can't not. I have to work. Okay. Let's figure out why the audio is not working. Okay, let's go back. Okay. Hopefully this will work. Okay. Can you hear it? Oh my, I can't. I can't. I can't. I can't. I can't go on. Okay, I'll keep going. Whew. Reactionary feminism's case against biotechnology and BDSM. Look, we're figuring it out, you know? We're learning and growing together. Um let's see. Hello. Okay, my microphone is working. Okay, but can hear me? Yes, speaking. What's going on? I have a hair appointment tomorrow morning. Um okay. That's fine. I'll The show must go on. Reactionary feminism's case against biotechnology and BDSM is rooted in superstition. Harrington casts herself as a clear eyed realist who learned to see through her progressive milieu's unthinking dogmas. Let me go back to sharing the screen. Share it, share it, share it. Ultimately, though, like her sympathizers on the Christian right, she tends to substitute mere intuition, if not superstition, for facts or reasoned argument. This habit is best exemplified by her indictments of BDSM and biotechnology. Harrington sees the rise of kink as a scourge, please, and one inextricable from the advent of contraception. No, I think there was some kink before contraception. She posits that people have gravitated toward BDSM as a way of compensating for the drab safety of protected sex, writing that eliminating the risk of pregnancy takes much of the dark, dangerous, and profoundly intimate joy out of sex. No, and that men and women seek to recapture that darkness and danger through depraved fetishes and sexual. See, no. She provides approximately zero evidence for this theory, and although I am extremely ill positioned to speak to the unconscious motivations of masochistic women on hormonal birth control, it seems doubtful to me that the majority turn in BDSM in an attempt to recapture the lost thrill of worrying mid coitus that a condom just broke. Meanwhile, Harrington's hostility toward both contraception and gender affirming medicine is rooted partly in a superstitious aversion to biotechnology. Yeah, superstitious aversion to biotechnology. That makes perfect sense. Harrington says that she felt alienated from her female body as an adolescent, but came to find comfort and joy in it later in life. She is therefore understandably concerned that young women going through a similar period of pubescent angst today might be misdirected toward unnecessary medical treatments with significant side effects. But her concerns about trans inclusive healthcare are scarcely confined to questions of pediatric gender medicine's diagnostic protocols or the limitations of existing research on patient outcomes. Rather, she's skeptical of all attempts to bring our bodies into closer alignment with our conscious needs and desires. As she put the point to me, the significance of the contraceptive revolution, as I see it, is that it breaks with millennia of medical tradition in seeking not to fix something that's working abnormally in the name of health, but to break something that's working normally. Female fertility in the name of individual freedom. Harrington regards the latter endeavor as inherently hubristic and liable to be corrupted by amoral profit seeking. Yet her book also demonizes medical innovations aimed at preventing a patient's imminent death. In Feminism Against Progress, she cites attempts to develop lab grown organs, a line of research aimed at saving the lives of very ill people, as one of the nightmarish consequences of the contraceptive revolution. Her book's only actual argument against the practice, however, is that it is unnatural. But nature is not our friend. Thank you. Vaccines are unnatural. Evolution didn't shape our bodies and brains with an eye to our welfare as conscious beings or our morality as social ones. Rather, it shaped us for survival and reproduction under a set of ecological and social conditions that our species long ago outgrew. For this reason, the normal functioning of our bodies can be quite antithetical to our well being. Natural bodily processes leave many of us susceptible to clinical depression, cancer, and gender dysphoria. For the bulk of our species' history, meanwhile, the natural functioning of human fertility condemned many human communities to cyclical famines as population growth outpaced gains in economic productivity. Of course, we should have humility when messing with biological systems that we do not fully understand, and novel interventions that radically disrupt bodily processes should be subjected to clinical scrutiny. But the idea that contraception and gender affirming care are inherently bad because they break our natural biology and open the door to further enhancements of the human body is a quasi religious argument, not a rational one. Right. If we should not reflexively venerate nature, the same is true of the sexual revolution. Any social transformation is liable to have some negative consequences. Reactionary feminists aren't wrong to ask pointed questions about how well contemporary sex norms are serving women, but they're wrong to provide regressive and misleading answers. Focusing one's public commentary on making a contrarian case for traditional sexual morality and against trans rights is a sound way of carving out a niche in a crowded culture war discourse and earning the patronage of American conservatives. But it is a poor approach to actually improving women's lives, for sure. And of course, as y'all have noted, who are the women who get left out of this discourse? Women who don't fucking want kids, women who should not be parents, people who should not be parents. Okay. Also, queer people, not in this conception of the world. I assume that that's on purpose. I honestly assume that if you are so hardcore against trans rights, that you're also homophobic. But I also encountered the work of a white British lesbian named Kathleen Stock, who is queer and she's also transphobic. So there's that. Okay, next, final thing. We're just here. We're just here thugging it out. Okay. Um, Let me go back to this. Let's go to Moira. Come on, come on. Oh, wait. Well, while I'm doing that, I can put up my chat screen. I haven't used this screen. Okay. All right. This is not so long as the other one. Sex positivity was fake, but we'll miss it when it's gone. This is from November 2022. Early on in Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, his autobiographical account of New York's gay cruising scene in the 70s and 80s, Samuel R. Delaney takes his lesbian friend Anna to one of the porn theaters that then lined 42nd Street, which is crazy. Really, if you've been to New York recently, you cannot even imagine how crazy Times Square used to be in the 70s and 80s. It's so nuts. Okay. Anna had been intrigued by Delaney's description of anonymous gay sex in the theaters and reading his book. I get why she wanted to go. Delaney writes like he's composing a eulogy for a lost utopia. In Delaney's mind, the old Times Square offered a democratization of sexuality, a kind of fucking that was momentarily unburdened by anxieties of performance or status. But the gay cruising scene of that era was also unburdened, we should note, by the reality of sex inequality. Anna comes with Delaney to a theater, and they stay for about an hour, Anna mostly watching. When they leave and walk out into the bright afternoon, Anna recounts a few exchanges she had inside. Men had issued occasional insults and backhanded comments, the sort of thing meant to make her aware that she was a woman in a place for men. One passerby called her fish. Maleness served as both armor and passport in this world of sexual freedom, and Anna has neither. But or should I say Anna? But Anna also seems surprised by the fact that among the men, the atmosphere was overwhelmingly calm and civil, even polite. She recounts turning down a man who had propositioned her in an aisle, only to have him shrug and smilingly walk away without recrimination or threat or evident resentment. You didn't tell me, she paused. Didn't tell you what? That so many people say no, and that everybody pretty much goes along with it. This is the part that seems so foreign to a woman's experience. The sexual pleasure might be simultaneously available and also refusable. But for all the theater scene's potential, to Anna, it still feels out of reach. Would you go again? Delaney asks her. No, why not? Well, I was scared to death. Delaney chafes at this. Why not? What's she so afraid of? He doesn't want to see the difference between them, doesn't want to admit that there is a difference. But of course, women can't cruise, not with anything like the casualness and gamely curiosity that men do. Women have to worry about rape. I think of this scene from Delaney often explicitly for this exchange. The woman, bearing witness to male sexual license, both admires its freedom and knows that it is not available to her. This knowledge of circumscribed sexual possibilities provokes a range of feelings in women, from rage and shame to jealousy, resentment, obsession, striving, and grief. The problem of how women can pursue sexual life in a world where sex is so often used to punish and control them remains something that even the most gifted and intrepid writers on women's lives finds difficult to understand, perhaps even more difficult to tell the truth about. Maybe it's because so many of these feelings are ambivalent and incriminating. After all, in so much of sexual politics, women are permitted to say only two things about sex: yes or no. Hmm. I'm sorry. Mora? Mora? Mora, you're getting it. Okay. Keep going. One of the writers who has failed to tell the truth about women's frustrations with sexuality is Louise Perry. In her new book, Against the Sexual Revolution, despite the title, the book dwells very little on the 1960s. Instead, the book is quite narrowly contemporary, with Perry identifying what she feels are problems of modern sexual culture. Perry, a young Brit who writes for places like the Daily Mail, I feel like that's shade. I feel like that shade presents herself as a kind of convert, someone who once held honest optimism and yearning for an anonymous and unburdened sexuality, but has since come to see sexual utopia as a childish fairy tale. Now she believes that the untethering of women's sexual life from marriage, monogamy, and procreation has been a disastrous mistake. An ultimately doomed project that was undertaken by naive feminists under the delusional premise that women, contrary to their nature, could have sex like men. Much of her book is an attempt to debunk that premise. Okay, here's the thing. Why can't we find a middle ground between women can have sex like men, either, because of what's happening in our bodies or socially? Like, why can't, w- why is the solution not, well, let's figure out what a healthy, responsible, and maybe not even responsible, right? Like, how can we figure out what, because, responsibility is like, whatever. What if we said, what does a healthy, accessible, socially and institutionally supported women's sexuality look like? What does exploration look like? What do the institutions need to be? What do the social norms and mores need to be? It's like it goes straight to ban the pill, like what? Like what's going on? Like I don't I don't know. Like I just feel like we skipped some steps. I feel like we're skipping some steps. If the question of how to pursue sexual life under patriarchy is a problem for women, then the solution in Perry's mind is not for women to embark on a feminist effort to change bad conditions, but instead to accept them as unchangeable. Things can't be otherwise, she insists. Women need to seek out the greatest possible protection they can find under a sexual regime of male domination. To this end, she instructs young women to pursue a return to heterosexual marriage. The strategic postponement of intercourse, the abandonment of prostitution and pornography, and the cultivation of sexual repression, her word, in men. A digressive thought exercise about whether or not transgender children should be allowed to play school sports arrives with the grim predictability of an algorithm, which is so crazy. But Perry's book might be useful as a measure of the discontent with sex positivity. The sense that feminism's most well worn prescription for women's sexual freedom are a bit simplistic, perhaps overly deferential to men's interests, or too convenient for the status quo. Perry's objections to sex positivity are not even wrong. She finds understandable discomfort in the proliferation of online porn, particularly the violent kind, which she fears is inculcating men to fetishize hurting women. She's alarmed by what she claims is the ubiquitous popularity of strangulation as a sex act. Me too. She also points out you know, I heard a male sex worker say not too long ago. I heard a male sex worker say not too long ago that the implications of like the exposure of people to porn too young is not just the fetishizing of young women, of violence towards women. It's not just the fetishization of violence towards women. It's also that it's like the fetishization of men being violent with themselves, meaning like really aggressive masturbation and like aggressive like sex acts, and that desensitizes their penis. I can say penis, can I? Right? And if you are participating in such aggressive masturbation and aggressive like intercourse, that you're gonna have to like keep doing that to get sexual satisfaction. You're gonna have to keep doing that to get to orgasm, and you're gonna have to do it like harder and harder. And so the normalization of violence in porn is not just the strangulation. The strangulation part is also like violent, the beating it out the frame or whatever intercourse that inhibits men's ability to get to climax, get to orgasm. And then, of course, like the real issue is like, what are you doing to women in the course of intersex? During the course of intercourse. Anyways, that was a little digression because shout out to that sex worker that I was listening to. Okay. But Perry's book might be useful. Okay, fetishizing. She is alarmed by what she claims is the ubiquitous popularity of strangulation as a sex act. I don't know if it's ubiquitous, but it's definitely too common. She points out the degradations and bad pay in much of the sex industry and calls out feminists for ignoring them. Are feminists ignoring them? I don't think they are. These at least are fair criticisms. And I don't think feminists are ignoring them. I think it's like, this is horrible, but the solution is not to ban porn. Okay. And calls out feminists. Okay. These, at least, are fair criticisms. And at times, Perry can be incisive in her diagnosis of feminism's fears and failures under the sex positivity regime. It is true that porn and its influence has been insufficiently analyzed by a feminism afraid to critique it. Oh, we are really back to the 70s. We are really back to the 70s. This is crazy. This is so crazy. Dude, we are really back to the 60s and 70s. Okay. It is true that much of feminism has treated sex workers as a monolith, ignoring the industry's exploitation so as not to seem puritanical. It is true that kinks that eroticize women's subordinate social position also reinforce and entrench that subordinate social position. Mm. Oh, I think she meant to say it is true that kinks that eroticize women's subordinate sexual position also reinforce and entrench that subordinate social position. That makes more sense. It is all true, but if Perry's diagnoses often seem reasonable, her prescriptions are backward, bizarre. I read Perry's book recently at the invitation of a friend who wanted to know what I thought of it. I can see why Perry's work brought me to mind for her against the sexual revolution diagnoses some of the same problems I've seen in my own work with so called sex positivity, a complicated and contingent phrase, but one which broadly serves to describe the dominant position of feminist sex politics since the second wave era. Sex positivity began as an appropriate phase in feminism's intellectual maturation. That sex was per se good and should be treated as a social good seemed like both the lessons of the 60s sexual revolution, with its long overdue disposal of moralistic, sexist, and retrograde gender codes, and also the correct retort to the 80s era of conservative reaction, particularly its cold, judgmental, and murderous condemnation of gay men in the AIDS crisis. Dude, I've also been reading about what happened in the AIDS crisis. That is also nuts. Okay, hegemonic forces. I mean, so insane. Um, well, hegemonic forces opposed sexual pleasure then. Sex positivity was a useful rubric for resisting them. But as sexuality becomes less inhibited in the 21st century, sex positivity has lost some of its usefulness as a corrective. In a context of already destigmatized and open heterosexual expression, sex positive thinking could begin to look like a mandate towards women's sexual availability. Not a defense of women's sexual freedom, but a reassertion of men's sexual entitlements. Ooh, Moira, you're cooking. This was unsustainable. There was always going to be a turn away from sex positivity in feminist thought, but some form of it was a prerequisite in feminist circles from about 1982, the year of the Barnard Conference on Sexuality, that ignited the infamous sex wars, until 2017, and the mainstreaming of Me Too. Even now, the dominance of sex positivity has only begun to crack. But Perry's problem with sexuality is not coercion or force. Her problem, she says, is disenchantment, right? Perry has an array of culprits for this disenchantment. Sometimes men are sexually violent because they are naturally hardwired to be by evolution. At other times, they are sexually violent because exploitative tech and porn industries have corrupted and addicted them, making them unable to control themselves. Never does men's sexual aggression or opportunism seem to be their own fault. Hmm. This all tracks. Nerve endings get desensitized over time as a protective mechanism. Okay. Clock it. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading some of these. Back to the old days. Yeah, okay. Okay, back to this. Just catching up on this. Who? Okay, balance freedom. Oh, okay. Never does men's sexual aggression or opportunism seem to be their own fault. Women, too, are wrong about their own professed desires. For a book that's supposedly so much about the gendered pitfalls of sexual permissiveness, against the sexual revolution spends almost no time on Me Too. When Perry does turn to the movement, she trots out an old misogynist trope that women who claim to have been sexually violated are really complaining about their own unrequited love. What? There were a lot of women who described sexual encounters that were technically consensual, but nevertheless left them feeling terrible, Perry asserts, because they were being asked to treat as meaningless something that they felt to be meaningful. But this misunderstands Me Too's central complaint. The problem was never that women found sex too casual. It was that they found it too unkind. Courtesy, attentiveness, respect for refusal, an investment in someone else's good time. These are what I hear women looking for in their sexual utopias, and none of them require a diamond ring. The problem expressed in Moira, you're fucking cooking. Yeah. Yeah. The reason why we have to spend so much time telling women what you can do, can't do, should do, shouldn't do, should you take the pill, should you not, is because we've just, or they have just accepted that men are animals. like that's like that's like what this all comes down to is like men are animals and they are only driven by primal animalistic thinking, and there's nothing that we can do to change that. There's no incentives or disincentives that we can make to like not have them do that. So, girls, it's up to you. Okay. Um, it's up to you. Okay. Misogynistic trope. Okay. Courtesy, tenderness. Okay. The problem expressed in much of Me Too was not that committed straight love was too hard to come by. It was that sex had become much more available, but it had not become more refusable. Hmm. If Anna was scared in the movie theater, it's easy to imagine Perry as an enthusiastic scold, interrupting the furtive blowjobs in the rows of seats to tell the patrons to stop deluding themselves and admit that what they really want is to settle down and get married. I'm critical of any ideology that fails to balance freedom against other values, Perry writes. What other values? She doesn't say. Part of why Perry's book seems like a wasted opportunity is that other writers have engaged with the failures and inadequacies of sex positivity in much more productive terms. In the years since Me Too, there has been a groundswell of feminist writing that grapples with the social and political dimensions of sexual dominance in ways that are braver and more truthful than what might have been possible back when sex positivity went unchallenged. Books by lucid, compelling, and often productively uncertain writers have emerged. I'm thinking of Srinivasan's The Right to Sex. I've been meaning to read The Right to Sex. Amia Srinivasan, The Right to Sex. That is the third time I've seen that book come up. And Lorna Bracewell's Why We Lost the Sex Wars. Christine Imba's Rethinking Sex is an idiosyncratic critique of sex positivity on both radical feminist and Christian theological grounds. Nona Willis Aronovitz, the daughter of the influential sex positive feminist Ellen Willis, has written a surprisingly emotionally honest book, Bad Sex, which mixes memoir with feminist history to examine how and whether her mother's ideas are applicable to her own life. These writers are drawing on a long history of feminist critiques of the sexual revolution, critiques that examine men's sexual opportunism and force without ceding women's claims to freedom or denouncing sexuality's utopian potential. There's the incendiary Andrea Dworkin, or the compassionate visionary Audre Lorde, or the singular genius Catherine McKinnon. Catherine McKinnon is a genius for sure. Catherine McKinnon has some problems too. She has some problems. Okay. Few of these women would agree with each other, but all of them take. I just was not expecting the name Catherine McKinnon to come up as singular genius. I mean, she is a genius, but okay. Few of these women would agree with each other, but all of them take positions that could be called sex negative. None of them. I mean, I guess I have a view of Catherine McKinnon because I'm black. I think blackness is interrupting my McKinnon thoughts. Okay. None of them accept sexual inequality as inevitable. Conservatives like Perry, by comparison, don't seem alert to sexist pleasure or potential at all. They don't seem to really think that much of value is lost. They don't seem to really think that much of value is lost or violated in sexual violence. But I guess this makes sense. If you think of the whole sexual sphere of life as corrupt and degraded, full of broken delusions and corrupting vanities, then rape or coercion, or any of the other kinds of sexual cruelties that men inflict on women might not seem so terrible. They're not an insult to what sex could be, but merely the logical conclusion of what it has always been. But for all Perry's cynicism, but for all of Perry's cynicism, it seems like we may be returning to the kind of world she would prefer. We are. A creepy, tech savvy version of gender conservatism among women is gaining ground. Social media is awash with clips of trad wives and stay at home girlfriends performing a choreographed pantomime of hyper stylized 50s femininity, including cooking and waiting for men to come home. Peter Thiel is bankrolling a women's media company, Evie, that advocates for gender complementarianism. What is going, white gay men are so fucking problematic. Cause it's like, babe, you're gay. Like, I'm sorry. How are you talking about gender complementarianism? Babe, like what's going on? What's going on? Is it just me? I like, okay. Okay. Like Perry, they issue dark warnings about hormonal birth control. Roe is gone and abortion has been outlawed in large swaths of the country. Unless something dramatic changes in American politics, a national abortion ban and the rollback of contraceptive rights are coming too. Do I think there's going to be a national abortion ban? I don't know. But I do think that a rollback of contraceptive rights are coming. I do think that. Or it's going to be back to the states or whatever. It's possible that no woman has ever had real access to sexual utopia. It's possible that all of them, like Anna, have found that exposure to absolute sexual freedom, such as it exists under patriarchy, often leaves them alienated and scared. In that sense, sex positivity may have always been inadequate, partial, a fantasy. But it seems tragic to give up the progress we've made and cowardly to abandon the fight. Maybe sex positivity was always fake, but I think we'll miss it when it's gone. Um, Moira ate that. Her blog is called Not the Fun Kind, which is from a quote from Andrea Dworkin. I think she said, what did Andrea Dworkin say? Like, I'm a real feminist. Like I'm a feminist who advocates for like rights and stuff, not the fun kind or something. Let me see if I can find the Dworkin quote. Not the fun kind. And while I'm looking for that, let me pull up this. Okay. Okay. The quote is I'm a radical feminist, not the fun kind. That's funny. And it's so funny that she named her blog that because I've always really liked that quote. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Anyways. Anyways, guys, that has taken us through our readings for the day. What are my I don't have any concluding thoughts. The thing is we are going sex negative, not just because of the emotional and psychological harms that trying to navigate quote unquote sex positivity has in a patriarchal society, but we are in an era of compulsory sex negativity because of restricted access to abortion, potentially restricted access to hormonal birth control. There's a really good op-ed in the New York Times about how uh, the Supreme Court recently rejected an attempt to ban the abortion pill, but the article goes through the legal arguments that were presented and the responses from the Supreme Court. And basically, the end of the op ed was this: the Supreme Court rejected banning the abortion pill on a technicality, on standing. They were saying that the litigants who brought the case don't have standing to argue it. But in the decisions, they're going through what the justices are saying about potentially banning the abortion pill. And I mean, they're overwhelmingly skeptical of the abortion pill and the right to it. So, the same way we saw this happen with, abortion, we saw this happen with affirmative action. The idea is, if the anti abortion pill people find the right claimant, then the abortion pill will be outlawed. They just have to find the right people to build the case around and see it through, and then there will be no more access to the abortion pill either. So that's that. Okay, yeah, I am going to get on to Moira. I like her. The population has not grown since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and it's going to continue to shrink because of the environment that they refuse to fix, right? So, since Roe versus Wade, the birth rate has continued decreasing. Imagine that. So, since the overturning of the federal right to access safe and legal abortion via Roe versus Wade, the birth rate has actually continued to decline. So, how's that working out for you? How's that working out? The issue is the conditions. And all of the social scolding around marriage is not pushing people to get married, and all of the hand wringing around the the birth rate, meaning oh, what's going to happen in, I don't know, 20 years or 30 years when there's not enough wage earners to support social security? Do you think that's my problem right now? You think I'm going to have a baby right now in order to support social security in 20 years? What? Sorry, it's not going to happen. Like, I don't know. um Anyways, like this stream. Oh, let me look at a few more comments before I wrap it up. Telling people to have children is just a cop out. In my opinion, it's taking the easy way out instead of taking a look at the economy, the living conditions in society, and what society accepts for sure. For sure. It's all an attempt to control the actions of women without taking into consideration that women have free will. Women, by and large, have made their decision to abstain from sex very clear. Yeah, women are abstaining from sex. Women are abstaining from childbirth and child rearing. And unless people's material conditions meaningfully change, like there is something to be said about how culture changes, how it is more acceptable to prioritize self actualization. But I did encounter some data, even though I'm hesitant to cite the data because I'm not 100% confident in it. But the idea is that 80% of the women who end up not having children say that they were not child free by choice. And so the problem is not the me's, right? I've been saying I didn't want to have children since I was 16, loud and proud, okay? Pregnancy looks awful, okay? So the problem is not the me's. The problem is the number of women who start off in life and go through life saying that they would like to have children, that that is a desire. And they're not able to complete that desire, or they have the desire but choose not to fulfill the desire for all kinds of reasons. What are you doing to address that? Nothing? Oh, okay. Like, what do you do? Like, oh, okay, nothing? Okay. So we're just going, this is just what. Like Ebony K. Williams, I'm glad she's going to be a mother, even if it's not originally how she wanted it to be. Oh man, I have so many Ebony K. Williams. But yes, Ebony K. Williams absolutely made the right choice. But Ebony K. Williams, if I really had to guess, I would say Ebony is clearing. I would say Ebony is clearing $500,000 a year. I think, and that might be undershooting it, right? I mean, 500 even might be a little low. Um, Actually, I might be right on target. I'm actually pretty good at guessing people's like incomes. Actually, I'm actually pretty good. Um, so Ebony is going to be fine, and her child is going to be fine because she has more resources than most two parent homes. The thing that gives two parent homes an advantage is the resources, but it's also the amount of stress that's in the household when you can offset some labor to somebody else. It's also the ability to invest in children because you have extra resources. um you can invest more money into the children, but you can also invest more of your time into them because you can pay people and bring people in and have somebody else there. Okay? We're living in a real bad world, okay? I'm just going to say we're living in a real bad world, a real bad country, a real bad society when the women who when the women who have children are only the women who feel confident about having children are the women who live in households with more than 150,000 or $200,000 a year. And honestly, even those households, I'm saying, like, we're at a point where even like a household income of $200,000 a year, like those people feel like, oh, is that going to be enough? And those are the top. Like, if you are existing in a household where the combined income is 200,000, you're like top 10%. Might be higher than that. I know top 5% is 3 something, 350. Between 350 and 90 is top 5%. So if you have two six-figure earners in a home, you're doing better than 90 something percent of Americans. And it's like when those people are like, I don't know if this is gonna be enough. Something is really fucked up. I just think none of these prescriptions are getting to what the actual problems are. And these prescriptions, I mean, it's really telling that so many of the prescriptions that are gaining traction are prescriptions that actually make the world worse for women and for queer folks of all genders and for trans people. like like I don't know. It's bad. Mm. um a lot of moms, married or not, need support outside of their partner. Oh, this is the other thing. So, I have been inspired to read these books because I want to develop my own thoughts about them. But, the idea that feminism, women's ability to access contraception or more liberal or whatever sexual mores means that we are automatically or inherently divesting from community care or dependency is really crazy to me as an unmarried woman who is what I believe is the best aunt in the world. I think a lot about how being this age and not having children and having this much flexibility in my life allows me to show up for my nieces in ways that just were none of my aunts, and I have many of them, could show up for me in that way because they had their own shit. They had their own families and their own children and their own jobs and their own relationships, own marriages to try to. Never mind. Let me not go in on my aunts. Okay. Um, and the freedom that access to contraception and access to higher education and access to healthcare via Obamacare. And the freedom that all of those things, and these are structural things, by the way, okay, have afforded me allows me to be a better family member. You can't really be a good family member. Look, I think it's hard to be a great family member or community member when you're stressed, you're overextended, your resources are strained. So the idea that automatically it's inherently all about individualism and just, you and doing whatever you want all the time. And it's like, what if we're actually creating, what if a consequence of reproductive justice, meaning reproductive freedom, is more women having more time to invest equitably or thoughtfully or intentionally in more people? And like, I know people don't love that kind of framing because, I have heard people say, well, if you choose to have children, it's not your if you choose not to have kids, it's not your responsibility to like be invested in somebody else's kids. Do what you want. The kids are here. Okay? The kids are here. But anyways, I just think from what I have encountered in these arguments are just thinking about this really, really narrowly. Okay. Whew. So, anyways, that's all I have to say about that. The next time you see me, I'm gonna have braids because it's summertime. The next time you see me, I'm gonna have braids. That's all I got for you. Talk to you guys later. Bye.